Ingredient number 6, perpetual learning. Perpetual learning has a lot of deep meaning for me. I was homeschooled my whole life, and one of the major benefits I received was that I learned how to learn. Instead of being told what to learn and when to learn it, I was able to follow my curiosity and learn what I wanted to learn, and more importantly, learn how to learn anything I needed. Essentially, learning on demand. After 30 years of experience with this at this point, there's really no limit to what I can learn, and there's no stress and there's no anxiety about learning something. It's just part of being for me. We made that part of our team culture and one of our 7 core values at play practice. We now have a team of 8 in 2023, and all of us are really capable learners. It's kind of cool to see that coming out in other team members. I'm a big believer in hiring good people and then training them, allowing them to learn, and allowing them to grow into the capability and the skill set they need to be a more productive, more capable member of the team. And so all of our staff have acquired new skills and demonstrated really incredible ability and a willingness to perpetually learn and continue to grow. And by demonstrating that habit and skill throughout our team culture, we're able to ask that of our players as well. One of the big reasons we really want to start working with players before their freshman year of high school is that they are still willing to change and learn and grow at that point. In my experience, a player that has achieved some success, was on their high school team, they have enough coaching voices in their ears and they're unwilling to learn anything new, or really unwilling to change because they've achieved an identity with some success, and they're unwilling to subject themselves to some failure during a learning process that would make them look bad, make them look awkward. Their peers see them airball shots when they're trying to learn some new footwork. That's not really worth it for them. One of the quotes I really like is that success is often the biggest obstacle to future growth, and I really found that to be true. Typically that 10th grade, sophomore high school guy that's, maybe he's playing guard, he's a pretty good shooter, and he's kind of happy with his level of success. He's not really going to be willing to change, and again, not willing to subject himself to a learning process where he could experience some failure and some reduction in performance, even though his performance could go way higher after that threshold. Not really willing to go through that process. So therefore, our work is not really able to have as big of impact on a player with that kind of mindset. So what we're really looking for is to leverage, the work that we do, the impact we can have with 10 to 14-year-old players, at least as a start point. Like if they're 13 when we start working with them, we can often continue training them, through college, as long as we're still providing value from their perspective. But if we start past age 15 or so, again, they've kind of past our reach where we can really have the greatest impact and provide the most value. So what we're looking for is the player that's played a couple of years of basketball, so they have context for what basketball looks like, and they're hungry for learning more because they want to play, at the next level. Like they're 6th grade, they want to make that middle school team. They're really hungry for information, and they don't see themselves succeeding at the level they want to. And so they see that gap and they realize they want help to kind of bridge that gap. So I made a decision long ago that I would not coach motivation, right? I really have no patience for players that think they know it all, or not motivated to try something new, or not motivated to put effort into learning and changing. So our ideal players, kind of have that motor built in. They have batteries included, as I like to say. They're hungry because they have a goal of moving up and playing at higher levels, and they know they're not there yet, and they need and they want help to figure it out. I'm a big advocate for not giving unsolicited advice, right? A lot of coaches have their coaching ego on, and they see a player just at a random gym shooting by themselves, and they'll walk up to him and start giving him unsolicited advice, and the player never wants that. And so, I'm very much in the patient mode and really being selective about players we work with that really want our help And when they are seeking it out, we find that they are much more willing learners. And when we find the right player and they're kind of a sponge for information, they find that we are a fire hose of information and they can soak up as much as they can take. And one of the reasons we do our 30-minute sessions with our one-on-one training is that specificity of information and the volume of information that we can give them is almost too much to go past 30 minutes. Like when we go an hour, it's like they've had so much thrown at them that they can't retain it all, and it's not as effective. And so we find players that are willing to be learners, and then we're modeling that mentality as coaches about perpetually learning new things and demonstrating that, really wherever you are, this is just a starting point. However good you think you are, like, we'll show you where there's a lot of room for improvement. Like, basketball really has no ceiling for how good you can get at any level of skill, and no limit for how much you can learn about, the depth of basketball and what's really backfilling all of the decisions and all of the skills and all of the concepts that exist. And so when we find that player and they are a sponge and they're really hungry to learn, we really put them on the accelerator track to get their learning gears going. And what we've tried to do is create a system where we translate, the highest level concepts that would probably be seen as too complex by most people to relate to a beginner player. Really what we've taken is those important principles and concepts and just simplified them down to an accessible level that any player can actually relate to and understand. And so by having that systematic, simplified system, doing system and system, the simplified system of concepts, we can relate those concepts to the individual player's skill that we're working on. So when we boil things down, we zoom in, as I like to call it, we're going down to a really granular detail of a skill. We can provide that whole big picture. So we show them, here's the game situation and where that skill fits into that specific situation. That way, when we're doing one-on-one training, it's not do it this way because Coach BJ said so. It's we do it this way because given this game situation and these two options, when you make this decision, this is the skill that solves the problem that you're going to run into in that specific situation. And most coaching involves building that skill in isolation without telling the player anything about where it's going to go or how it's going to be used, and yet expect the player to be motivated to practice it. And learning really just doesn't happen that way. They need that big picture context, and they need to follow that trail down to where the skill actually fits in that big picture puzzle. And then their motivation to practice that is, off the charts. They are ready and raring to go to perfect that skill as a tool or as a solution to the problem they just saw. And then perpetual learning is giving our players a different perspective on learning in general, where in public school, the average student is kind of force-fed knowledge that they memorize and then they spit back out on a test, and they don't really have a reason to absorb it. Like, they might be receiving a similar fire hose of information, but they have no use for it. There's no context or meaning. Again, kind of skills in isolation is how I see that. You're memorizing facts, you're memorizing math formulas, but we don't connect that to real life and how it's used, and so it's just rote memorization and spit it back on the test, and phew, I passed the test and I'm able to move on. And so we're giving them a different look at learning with the hope of them taking on the autodidact, is one of my favorite words. Just means self-motivated, self-empowered learner. And, that's really what I've embraced and enjoyed the benefits of all of my life. And giving them a small sample of that in a basketball context that they really love and are really motivated to do enables them to be more comfortable exploring and learning things outside of basketball that they don't know, and become comfortable learning, in a progressive, perpetual motion kind of mindset. And they're not feeling like, I passed the test, or I won the game, or I made it on this team and now I'm done. It's I am a perpetual learner, and I am continually looking for new things to learn and improve. And, adopting that mindset really shows up in a lot of interesting areas. When a player starts to see the benefits of that in basketball, like they start thinking about, how else am I looking at learning in other ways in my life, other areas of my life. And so learning ways to recreate themselves and seek out ways to improve and adopt the mindset of perpetually learning forevermore. And, wherever I am, this is just the next step. And when I finish this step, I will be one step higher and have a better view of the future and what's next, and be ready to learn, how to get there on the next level. So perpetual learning is one of our core values of our whole business, but it's really an essential piece of our play practice formula. Why it made it on this list of ingredients is because we're changing the player's mindset and their mentality related to learning, and it has a much broader application beyond basketball. If the player really has that background and that supporting foundation of the identity of being a perpetual learner that's capable of learning anything they need to, it really amplifies what they're able to absorb, and then ultimately for us, how much impact each court session can have on improving their development, and then improving and progressing their perception of themselves into the future.